I want to be clear that I'm not pitching for money today. I'm not asking you for money, so don't worry about that at all. This is a presentation of, first of all, the status of the Apostolate of the Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter in Los Angeles. And secondly, I've gotten a lot of questions as to basically the roadmap. What are we doing? What do I do when I'm not listening to people in spiritual direction or blessing homes and so on? What is it? What is the work that we're doing? So first of all, the status Animarum report. Every October, a lot of dioceses request an update of how many people go to Mass, receive the sacraments and so on in each parish. And so we've kind of done a rough estimate of how many people come to the Mass with the Fraternity of St. Peter. In addition to what you see on the slide right now, we have 405 users of the FSSP LA app, so they're in contact with the rest of the community and ask for prayers and so on. And there are about 300 families registered in what is known as the Future Parish Database. This is a database which is online that people that would like to be part of the parish if it was near their home, obviously, or within reasonable distance, have signed up for this list to say yes, they are interested. Of course, when it does become a parish, then that list would be revisited and people would be able to say, no, I don't want to be on it because you're too far away, and so on. And then we have First Communions. Had a few First Communions this year, a lot more last year. We had a ton of baptisms this year. I'm not sure if St. Mary Magdalene is correct, but I do remember 3 times that I did 2 baptisms at once at St. Mary Magdalene. And we had another baptism at San Felipe Chapel today by Father Masudi. We have had a few events during the year. Not too many, because we don't have our own place, and trying to find somewhere to do events is rather difficult. So the big one that we had would be the Sacred Music Symposium, which we had in the summer, and which was very well attended, and it had 3 tracks. It had the music, it had the altar service, and it also had a handful of priests who were learning how to celebrate the extraordinary form. And now we've got the financial report. In the operating expenses, we are running in the black. We're okay. We still have a little bit of space there before the chart fills up. However, the reason why we are running in the black is because of the generous grant of Dan Murphy Foundation and also a subsidy from the Fraternity of St. Peter headquarters. So without those 2, we would actually be doing pretty poorly. We actually need probably about $65,000 more of donations to the operating expenses to cover our costs. So in a nutshell, what are those costs? Well, for example, food for the priests, salary for the music director, whatever purchases we need. A lot of money goes into office expenses, for example, the printings that we do, the bulletin, the rent for the rectory where the priests stay and so on. All that goes into the operating expenses. It's a lot more than what you would think, considering we don't have our own parish, but the expenses are still there. Moving on to the building fund, we have raised $549,000 cash, 1.6 or 1.7 million in pledges. And some of that cash is not from pledges, some of that cash is extra, so lumped together, it's slightly over $2 million. That's very good, considering we've only been at it a couple years now. We really only started the capital campaign not too long ago, so this is pretty good. However, the goal of the capital campaign is going to be around $7 million. And then we'll get into that in a minute. So, let's take a better look at the roadmap of the Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter, what we want to do in Los Angeles. The Priestly Fraternity of St. Peter sets up parishes dedicated to the extraordinary form. We are not just simplex Mass priests. Now this is something rather new for the city of Los Angeles. Until now, you have had individual locations, usually a regular church, that provides one Mass in the extraordinary form per week. I believe right now the fraternity is the only location in the city that has it every day. But what the fraternity offers is much more than that. It's kind of like having a full-time chef at your house, but only asking him to cook eggs every day. And he's constantly telling you, I can do so much more. And you tell him, no, I just want eggs. Just want eggs. But we can do so much more, and that's what the fraternity wants to do in Los Angeles. We want to give, in a nutshell, a full experience of the Latin Mass, of the extraordinary form, in a living manner. So you would have the different groups, you would have the different activities, you would have many things, but at the heart of it all will be the extraordinary form of the Mass. The last apostolate where I was in Sarasota, Florida. So I pulled up. The Bishop of Venice in Florida invited us, and he met me in the parking lot, and he said, okay, well, which church do you want to start in? And then he went into the pastor and told him, we're going to start doing the Latin Mass in your church. And then, after a year of seeing how well it went, he said, okay, it's time now for you to have your own church. They purchased the church, they restored the church, then he drove around the neighborhood with me, and he told me to pick out a house. They purchased that house, they restored that house, and then they left us with a debt of $2.5 million. Pretty cheap, but everything was cheap in that area of the country. And with a campaign, we paid it off rather quickly. During the recession of 2007, we paid it off within 8 years. And the bishop is so happy that he's doing the same thing again now in the southern part of the diocese. He's buying them a church, he's going to restore it, do the same thing all over again. So we came to Los Angeles, and we thought, okay, we're going to tackle this with one of three options of plan. Plan A would be that we would be entrusted one of the existing parishes of the Archdiocese. Plan B would be that we would purchase a Protestant church and restore it to make it Catholic. Or Plan C would be that we would build a new church. First, we explored Plan A, and the Archdiocese looked into 11 possibilities of churches that they could give us. And they went and they spoke to each of these parishes, and for one reason or another, none of them worked out. And so they came to the conclusion that it wouldn't be possible to give us an existing Catholic church. We would have to use one of the other options. So we started looking at Protestant churches for sale. This is Plan B. And we looked at over 15 churches, about, I think I want to say 55 or more. Those are the ones I can remember. We looked at everything. We looked at ones on the market, we looked at the ones off the market, we looked at things that could be converted into a church. We even approached dying Protestant churches and asked them if they would give us their church or sell us their church. I think I made one of the pastors kind of upset in Highland Park because I kept nagging him because I really liked his church. But that is what we've been doing for the last 3 years now. These are some of the churches that we were looking at. That top one in the top right corner was the very first one that I looked at. And then when I went to go take a look at the church, I didn't want to get out of my car because it was a scary part of town. And some more other churches that we were looking at. Plan C would be to build a church. Now, Plan C carries with it certain difficulties. The first difficulty is money. And the second difficulty is time. The money also kind of involves land. So if you're going to build a church from scratch, you need one parking spot for every 3 seats. If we're going to build a church to seat 1,000 people, we're going to need 5 acres. Now, if you go on LoopNet, you won't find 5 acres for sale in Los Angeles. And if you do, you're looking at something like $30 million. The other alternative would be to buy less land, but to build a parking structure. And again, that's expensive. And then to build, you are required to go through the Archdiocese policies, which are good, and it's good that they're in place, but it involves going from committee to committee and back to another committee for about the period of 10 years. So building is kind of not quite what we want to do just yet. We went back to Plan B, and we have been tackling Plan B with a 4-phase project. Now this has been in place. I'm not inventing anything new in this talk today. So far everything I've said, you can see it. I've told you before, maybe once or twice. I don't talk too much about this, and this is the reason why we are doing this meeting today, so that you can all know, we can all be on the same page. This is what the fraternity is doing in Los Angeles. So we're working on a multi-phase project, and the Dan Murphy Foundation has agreed to help us for 3 years with phase 1. This is the 3rd year. So moving forward, probably the Dan Murphy Foundation will not be helping us. I don't know. I've got to find out with them. But the first phase is to build community. When I came here, we basically started from scratch. There were existing communities already, but we've kind of brought it together to be the fraternity community. And we're building this community up. We're having community activities, masses, and so on. Phase 2 is a capital campaign, which we have already started. Now, the capital campaign is to raise enough money for a church. Phase 3 would be to purchase a Protestant church. And phase 4 would be to renovate and make that church Catholic. Now, phase 3, purchasing a Protestant church, the churches that I looked at, the vast majority of them are between $2 and $5 million. A $5 million church is almost ready for us. A $2 million church needs multi-million dollars worth of renovation. So in the end, of all the churches that I've looked at, a very good ballpark figure is about $7 million total for purchase and renovation. You either purchase it cheap for $2 million and you put in $5 million of renovation, or you purchase it expensive at $4 million and you put in $3 million of renovation. But that $7 million is a good number. That's why we have that total of $7 million. Now, not only have I looked at many churches, but I've also had many visits to the Archdiocese headquarters and met with their offices there. And most of the time, actually pretty much all the time, it's to get a no. What about this church? No. What about this church? No. What about that church? No. And as I was going through all these churches and asking them, eventually we started making headway. And they said, okay, well, it's okay for you to start fundraising now. Okay, well, I thought I could fundraise from day one, but they said, okay, now it's okay. And then eventually they laid out the rules that we need 60% cash and 40% pledges in order to make a purchase. I showed them what I did in Florida, and they were very impressed. And then with the same breath they said, but we are not going to follow the Florida model. What they said they would like us to do is to follow the Korean center model, which is the Koreans get together, they purchase a church, and then they go and apologize to the Archdiocese that they've gone and purchased a church. And they say, we're sorry we did this, but here's the title to the church. And the Archdiocese slaps their wrist, and then they can have their own parish. That's kind of the model that they would like us to do. So we run into certain challenges. The first challenge is money. How does the money work in pretty much every diocese? So I've got a diagram on here. In essence, the money works kind of like an ecosystem. Each diocese is its own bank. Now the diocese brings in all the money from all the parishes into this bank and creates a saving account where each parish will get interest off their excess money. From that saving account, they give loans to new parishes or to build parish centers or whatever they need money for, they give these loans. And then the parish continues to raise the money in their own bank account, which is the archdiocese. And then from that archdiocesan bank account, you pay off the loan from the archdiocese. It's all internal. And the reason for this is because the archdiocese is a charitable organization. Now, charitable organizations have to be very careful about money laundering. You can't take money and give it to one charitable organization, and then that organization give it to another organization, and so on. It raises a lot of flags. So, along those lines, it's been about 3 times that I've asked the Fraternity of St. Peter, can you guys give me a loan? And each time they've said no. And the reason why is because if the fraternity gives us a loan, the fraternity has to own the church. But the archdiocese won't allow that. The archdiocese requires that all the churches be owned by the archdiocese. This is general policy, nothing out of the ordinary. Most dioceses do that. In fact, I believe there's only 2 or 3 churches that the fraternity actually owns. All the other churches that are used by the fraternity, and in a way our churches, are all in name owned by the local diocese. It's general practice of the church. Same deal goes for seeking an external loan from a bank. You can't really do that because you're out of this ecosystem. So that is problem number 1 that we have to deal with, how the structure of the money works. Challenge number 2, location. What does centrally located mean in Los Angeles? If you punch in the search query centrally located into LoopNet, this is what you get. They're centrally located in the valley, they're centrally located down in Orange County, they're centrally located everywhere. So what does centrally located mean in Los Angeles? When I arrived in Los Angeles, I had a clean slate of a map. Where do I go? Probably the easiest way to start refining where to go would be to cancel out Orange Diocese and Camarillo, because Camarillo has their own church. Then, when I first came here, there were other locations where the Latin Mass is being celebrated. Now, the fraternity didn't come to Los Angeles to cause havoc with the neighbors or to take away other parishioners from other Latin Mass locations. The fraternity came to Los Angeles to solve a problem, to provide something that the city is lacking. And the way to do that is to set up a location away from where they already have it. You're not competing with anybody here. So when I first came here, in fact, I went to Father Bishop. We sat down and I said to him, okay, well, where do you think I should set up shop? And he told me, he said, look, we're already in Alhambra. They already have things in the other parts of town, in the south. There's nothing in the west. So why don't you go to the west side of the city and set up shop there? So I came to speak to Monsignor Murphy, and we've been working on looking in an area that is bound by the 110 to the east, the 405 to the west, so it's somewhat close to downtown still, the 10 to the south, and the 210 to the north. That's kind of the area where we have been looking for a church. So many of you have been asking me, where are we looking for a church? Why don't we go to Pomona? Why don't we go here? Why don't we go there? This is why. Because when I first came, I had this conversation with Father Bishop, and this is what he said. This is the ideal place for the fraternity to set up shop. So we've been operating for a few years, 3 full years to be exact, and there are many people from all over the city that appreciate what the fraternity does. I could give you different maps, mapping out people who use the app, mapping out people who are registered members of what would become the future parish database. But this map that I'm giving you are the people that received the Epiphany blessing last year. And the reason why I'm going with this parameter is because these people are interested enough to ask the priest to come and bless their home. And so they are involved in the Latin Mass in an active way. They're not just interested in getting news from us, but they're participating in the community. So this is where everybody is. Now, they're spread out all over. But if you triangulate from the corners to the center, you're going to end up with a kind of central location, which is right about the area of Burbank, Los Feliz, that general area. That's kind of where everybody kind of goes into like a central location. So to answer the question of where the central location is, that's where it is. Is that where we're going to find a church? Well, probably not, because if you're looking for a church for $7 million or less, you can't say, I want a church on such and such a street in Burbank that fits these parameters perfectly, because it doesn't exist. You've got to really work with it and see where can I get as close as possible to this. Next issue, children friendly. This is pretty important to the Fraternity of St. Peter, because we do a lot with young families, we do a lot with homeschool children, and we need to have a parish that is safe for the children. So at each location that we have looked at, I've worked with one of the parishioners who has helped me with this. We've done what we call a bad guy report. And the bad guy report covers the crimes that have happened in the general area and also the registered sex offenders, because we want to make it safe for our children as much as possible. Again, beggars can't be choosers when it comes to a church, but as much as possible, we're not going to get a church in a very bad area of town where we have to be afraid of children getting back to the car after whatever we have. And so along those lines, we've been looking for things like parking. Is it safe at night? And somewhere for the children to play, particularly for catechism. Honestly speaking, catechism right now is pretty boring for the kids. They come, they sit outside on the balcony, they listen to me talk until they're bored to death, and then that's it. They go back to their cars. In Florida, it was a full day thing. We would have soccer, we would have refreshments, we would have mass, we'd have all sorts of stuff. And the kids loved it. They looked forward to youth group. They looked forward to catechism days. So we need somewhere for the children to play, and eventually, not right now, but eventually we need a school, because all these babies that are being born. So we've come up with certain parameters that we are looking for in these churches that we are looking at. First of all, we want it to be family friendly. We want it to be in a safe area. We want parking, because most of our people are going to be coming from a distance. They need somewhere to put their car. We need it to be close to a freeway, because again, people are coming from a distance. What we've been looking for is something that seats 300 people. And we want it to be safe. And then there's a few other extra things that would be nice. To have a hall, to have a school, to have a place for the priest to live, and so on. And then we come back to challenge number 5, which once again is money. As I've been saying, the cheapest church that we need will probably be $7 million, including getting it ready, renovating it, and so on. Now, we've done a campaign, and we're still doing the campaign among ourselves, but by the looks of things, we're stagnating around that $2 million level. We're not getting any further. So either people are waiting to see where the church will be before they give to it, or we can't give more. Now, I don't know what the answer is, but what I've been doing is I've been going outside the community to reach out to other people to see if they can give us money to make up the additional $5 million. But what I'm running into is that I'm not talking about you right now, I'm talking about the average Catholic. The average Catholic looks at Mass as an obligation that they have to fulfill, and that they want to fulfill as easily as possible. And if they are interested in a devout Mass, oftentimes it's for their family, for their children. They want it to be near their home. They don't share the vision that what we want to do is provide the extraordinary form for the good of the entire city of Los Angeles. That's something that's not on their radar. So when I sit down with them, it's basically, do I want to give money to this priest for his pet project? It's not so much that they see the same vision as we do. So it has been difficult to raise more money than this. As I mentioned, the Archdiocese requires 60% in cash. Currently, we could afford a church which is about $950,000. It's going to be many years before we get to 7 million. Maybe not many, maybe I'm exaggerating. But 5 years doesn't seem too much of an exaggeration to get to a place where we can purchase a church. This is taking longer than I wanted it to. However, challenge number 6, we need a church now. We've built up this community, but we need the church now for the community that we've built. Any of you who have had guests in your home, any of you who have hosted guests in your home, especially if you have to clean up after the guest leaves, you know that no matter how much you like your guest, a good guest knows when to leave. Now, the parish of St. Victor's is completely hospitable to us. And Father John Paul is completely hospitable to us. But I'm not speaking for St. Victor's, I'm speaking for myself. As wanting to be a good guest, we were invited here by Monsignor Murphy. So it's only fair that we don't overstay our welcome here if Monsignor Murphy is no longer among us. Now again, this has nothing to do with St. Victor's. They're extremely welcoming to us. But are we being good guests or not? Obviously, we could probably stay here another 10 years. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying that anybody is kicking us out. I'm saying that it's time. It's time we need a church. Because we're kind of being the guests that are lingering there while you're waiting to clean up the house. Next thing is that we really need that Sunday collection. So, pulling this back up again, I don't know if we're going to get that grant from the Dan Murphy Foundation again next year. We need to come up with about half of what we need to do for our operating expenses, and the only way to really do that is by having a collection. Now, the places where we say Mass, we don't keep that collection. That goes to the church, who have been very kindly welcoming us and whose facilities we are using for the Sunday Mass. So, just for the fact that we need our Sunday collection is another reason why we need our church now. The next one's interesting, and it hurts. We are the only church group in Los Angeles, Catholic or not Catholic, that doesn't have a Sunday morning Mass. Everybody else gets to worship God in the morning on Sunday, except us. Now, when you think about the Sunday obligation and how Sunday should be primarily for God, we're kind of missing something here. We're not doing the best we can. Again, it's not our fault. It's all we've got. We need a place for the choir to practice. Last week we had to worry about if we could have a different room to practice in and so on. And so on. We need all this stuff. And then we have the other, these are actually the scary things, and I don't want you to get alarmed about it, but in essence, our presence here is only hanging from a thread. The Fraternity of St. Peter priests do parishes. The Fraternity of St. Peter doesn't send out priests like they sent me. This was an exception to the rule, to send a priest to a city to see if we could start something. And it's going on for years now. Things are coming down the pipeline. We're having a general election for the fraternity. We don't know if the new Superior General of the fraternity is going to be of the same mindset as Father Berg. Is he going to say, hey, come back to headquarters? Every time I see one of my superiors, they're threatening me with an office job. And I'm telling them, no, I don't want it. I would go insane in an office. So we don't know what's going to happen next summer. Also, we're only in residence. It's not even an assignment. We're almost like priests on vacation that have permission to do the sacraments. Our situation in the Archdiocese is very precarious. And this brings up another challenge. This will be the last challenge I talk about. There's tons of challenges. This one is the last one. And again, it's money. This brings up the question, we have $500 and something thousand. What happens to that money if the next Superior General of the fraternity says, get out of there, I need you back at headquarters? Or a very legitimate question which the diocese is going to honor our money in their bank, but it is a legitimate question that I get all the time from benefactors. What's stopping the Archdiocese once we raise like $5 million to say, hey, we need this money for something else, thank you. There's nothing written down anywhere that stops them doing that. Again, the Archdiocese will not do this. But what's stopping them? So this creates a vicious circle of benefactors not wanting to give money because they're afraid, we not getting money, and as a result we're not getting a church, and it's a vicious circle that just goes around and around, we're not getting anywhere. So, when I called this meeting 4 weeks ago, this was the end of the meeting. I was going to leave you miserable and sad, and I was going to conclude by saying something like, stop asking me if I found a church already. However, I think we figured out a solution. I think we found a loophole to get through all this, all these vicious circles, and I think there's somewhere forward. And to do that, let's take a look at the multi-phase project. We've got phase one pretty much complete. We've got a pretty good community, I have to admit. Phase 3 is about 5 years out. And we've got this huge jump between the two. And that's what's causing all the problems that I've been talking about. Well, how do you get from phase 1 to phase 3? As you know, I like Mini Coopers. I've always liked Mini Coopers ever since I was a kid. I walked into the Mini Cooper dealer in 2008 and I said, I've got $10,000 in my car. Can I have a Mini Cooper? And I was basically thrown out of the dealership. They said, get out of here. We haven't got a car for you. So I went down the street and went to the Volkswagen dealer and I said, I've got $10,000 in my car. Can I have a car? They gave me a new car. And then, figuring it out, I kind of did this thing like a stepping stone. And a year later, I went back to the Mini dealer and I said, a year ago you threw me out. Now I've got $10,000 in my car, which is a year old. Can I have a Mini Cooper? And they said yes. And I drove off that year with a brand new Mini Cooper. So maybe we could do something like this with our church. Maybe we could do a stepping stone church. Something that will bridge the gap a bit. Something that's not perfect, something that doesn't fit all the parameters that we want, but something where we can get started, where the fraternity can be at its full potential, giving your families what you need, have a full life of the fraternity, so that in turn we can say, this is what we want to do on a bigger scale. And then we can go back to these benefactors that I've gone to, and I can say, well, no, we're not going to build a church near your house because we have a community already, and this is what we're doing, and we need you to help us do something like this, but bigger. And then they'll see there's a need, they'll see what we can do, and they will want to help us, and they won't be all, well, I want that Mass right next to my house sort of thing. So this is kind of like a phase 2.5 thing, that we get this stepping stone church, and then use it for a few years, and maybe we could eliminate some of the other problems that we're finding by simply building. Maybe we'll be able to buy some property in the exact location that we want, and then build something purpose-built that's going to be the very visual of tradition. Maybe that's what we want to do, instead of retrofitting some Protestant church. This isn't uncommon. This is actually the normal way of doing things. Our Lady of Guadalupe Church in East LA began in a garage by Cristeros. There you see an image of Blessed Sacrament Church, the original Blessed Sacrament Church, and also you see an image of the original St. Victor's Church. In Ocala, they have a beautiful church now. They started off in the fire station. When I was a kid, we started off in the hall of the local public school. This is quite normal to start small, build a community, and then move forward. It's not a done deal yet, let me be clear. I've been working on this for the last 3 weeks. It's looking good. I'll say that much. It's looking good, but it's not a done deal. Again, we're worried about this 60%, and I need to raise another 200,000 in the next 10 days, I think, before we can possibly get a loan. But it's looking good. It's looking quite probable that we might get this little church. Where is it? It's in San Fernando. Sorry, I'll break that news to you now. It's right near the 5, the 405, the 118, the 210, the 170. Yes, San Fernando is far, but if you calculate the time it takes to get from the 101 to St. Victor's, and the time it gets from that same spot on 101 to San Fernando, the time is almost the same. So while it is far in distance, it's actually not that much further in time. This church is 1.25 million. I think that's what we're trying to get it for. And this is the only church I've seen for that price that you get a really good deal. Like I say, I've been looking at over 50 churches. They're all expensive. I've seen a couple for $1 million. Usually it seats about 20 people, and it's like storefront. But this, what you get without paying for here, this is the cellar for this church. It's right opposite a big, beautiful park, which is great for our homeschool children. We can have catechism there, we can have barbecues after Mass on Sunday. Sunday can be a whole day thing, where you go to Mass, we have catechism, we play with the children in the park, and then in the evening we have Vespers, and we wrap it up and everyone goes home. So it's worth the half-an-hour drive to get there, because it's your whole day, it's your whole family, it's a day of joy, because we have this opportunity with this park across the street. Also, there's plenty of parking, so there's no problem there. And the most important thing about this is that we can actually start. We can have our own place. We don't have to worry about where we're going to schedule things. The park across the street also has rooms that we can rent if we want bigger rooms for events and so on. They have an event center. I guess the question is, how long does it take to get there? Depending on what part of the city you live in, I kind of asked Siri how long it would take you to get to San Fernando. And they vary. San Pedro's, this is without traffic, this is on Sunday morning. And then I asked Siri again, hey Siri, how long would it take from the same locations to get to St. Victor's? And I was actually surprised, because for the vast majority of people, it's within 4 minutes difference. If you live right next to St. Victor's, sorry, it's not the same distance for you. But The other interesting tidbit is that when they were thinking of building the new cathedral, they were actually thinking of building it in San Fernando because it was centrally located. And whenever they have events that are archdiocesan wide, they have them in San Fernando because it's centrally located. And here is the most interesting tidbit. The church that we are buying was an Eastern Rite Catholic Church, Syro-Malabar Catholic Church. And their community is almost like ours, that they travel from all over. And they chose that location because traveling from all over, from Pomona, from Lancaster, from San Pedro, they thought that that was their best location. And the new church that they bought is only a couple blocks away. So they're staying in San Fernando. So this is kind of interesting, this San Fernando thing. That wraps it up. I've got a few questions here. Sorry I've taken so long. You've been really patient. But these are the questions that I think you probably have. So instead of you putting up your hands, I'll answer the questions I think you have. First question. Why San Fernando? That's going to be the first question you want to know. Especially for those of you who have to travel far to San Fernando. Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm not happy about this, that it's in San Fernando. Why? Because me growing up, I traveled 50 miles one way by public transportation to Mass on Sunday. I was one of the people on the outskirts of town. And so, yes, other people tell me, well, for the most people it would be great. We can't please everybody. Yes, people will tell me that. But my heart goes out to you people, especially the ones that live furthest away. And I want to have the church as close as possible to your homes. But it's just not possible. I'm trying to do the best I can. So, I'm not thrilled about it. However, like I say, this is where the church was. I didn't get it because it's in San Fernando. We're getting it because of the price and because it's possible with this 1640 situation of getting a loan. It so happens to me that it's not a bad location either. And that's kind of what the other slide showed. It's not a bad location, it's just not next to your home. Next question. What about masses in the existing locations? Okay. What about San Felipe? What about St. Victor's? The fraternity is known to build rather than to tear down. And we want to provide the Latin Mass for the city of Los Angeles. However, what we want to do is we want to have one location that does it well. And that can be that beacon of light that does it well in a living way that other people can come with their choirs, with their servers, to learn how it's done and take it back to their locations. And then along those lines, once it's done well, we can spread out, and we can go to different locations and provide for the needs of the city. However, for the moment, what we need to do is we need to bring our priest power in, and we need to make what we're making well before we branch out. So, for the time being, we won't be able to have the Mass at St. Victor's and in East LA, at least not on a Sunday, because we'll be doing several Masses every Sunday at this church. We'll probably be doing 3 or 4 Masses at this church. So, for the time being, and then once we're established, and once we have 3 priests here, and once we're going well, we can revisit it and say, okay, well, people need it at their homes, closer to their homes. And then, yes, we have the manpower to do this, and let's do it, according to if it's okay with the local passes and so on. So, for the time being, maybe it's kind of sad. But in the long run, what we're doing is we're providing a perfect product, as you would. Something that is going to be a beacon of light for the city. Next question, what time will the Masses be? Okay, well, I'm going to put out a survey. And you can all fill it out. For you, your traffic from your home, what is the best time for you to have Mass? And based on that, we'll come up with a schedule that's best for everybody. When will we know for sure? Well, I don't know when we'll know for sure. Probably pretty soon. And when we do know for sure, then I'll let you know. Has the Founders Campaign ended? Actually, no, it hasn't. I said that the Founders Campaign would end when we knew the exact location of the future church. But this is a stepping stone church. So the Founders Campaign is still good. If you want to donate to the Founders Campaign, we need money. Frankly, we do need money or else we won't get this place. So the Founders Campaign is still open. And if you can make a donation, great. Where will the definitive location be? Well, now that we have our own place and we can do this calmly, what I want to do is I want to put together a committee. And I want to make this committee from 4 people from the furthest sides of the city. I'm going to let those 4 people fight. And where they come up with where the ideal location is, that's going to be somewhat prudent. Because not considering their own homes, they're going to look at different things like demographics and ideal locations for a school and so on. So we'll work with them. How long will we be in this starter church? Probably between 5 and 10 years. That being said, I work hard and I'm not going to stop working. I'm not going to take time off once we get to this church and say, well, we got here, we're good here. I'm going to keep looking for funds. I'm going to keep trying to raise money. We're still going to get the money we need to get the permanent location. But at least we have somewhere as a base for the time being. And what's the address of the church? Well, I'm not telling you. I'm not going to tell you until it's a done deal, but it's in San Fernando, very close to the Best Buy that's there. So it's right there where the highways are. That's it. Thank you for your patience. And if you kneel down, I'll give you a little blessing. Insidiani Patentes, Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti, Descendet super vos et manet semper. Amen.